A very active weather pattern will be setting up for the Northeast and parts of Mid-Atlantic and the northern tier of the U.S. in the coming days. Potential for a tropical depression to develop here, as well as multiple rounds of severe weather into the middle of next week. First, I appreciate you watching. Like my video if you like it, subscribe, share with your friends, and hype my video. It's really important. So let's get started. So as far as the tropics go, really the biggest concern in the short term to the long term here is this potential for tropical development along the Gulf Coast here, right? And then potential for it to move over into Florida and parts of the southeast. And as of right now, the Atlantic, it's got a 20% chance of developing within 7 days. So still pretty low here. I think regardless, we're going to get some rainfall in this area, but that's the tropical outlook for the next 7 days for this area. We do have another area of disturbed weather off the African coast that could develop, but not going to be impactful only to maybe the Cape Verde Islands with disturbed weather out here. And eventually it'll move in the open Atlantic and will likely not develop any further. I think the possibility exists for it to make its way eastward here and maybe develop somewhere here. But that's a long way off, and we'll worry about that later on. As far as severe weather, for today, there's a bunch of marginal risks here up into Idaho and Montana, up here in the northern tier of the U.S., upper Midwest, and parts of the Mississippi Valley down into parts of the southeast, including Georgia for some gusty winds here. Tornado threat is highest up to the north here in Michigan and Minnesota today, 2% chance. And we got the 5% chance of severe wind gusts. I talked about this severe threat here in the deep south, southeast, and the Mississippi Valley, up here in the northern tier of the U.S., the upper Midwest, and parts of Montana and Idaho today. So not a huge risk, but it's there, right? And hail risk, we got a 5% hail risk in the northern mode areas here with no severe hail expected in the south here, but you never know. Tomorrow, the severe risk shifts to the south and east here. Quite a large area, potential severe tomorrow, okay? Mid-Atlantic, parts of the Ohio Valley, and a slight risk all the way back to Chicago, St. Louis, and parts of the southeast and the northeast. General thunderstorms otherwise, with a small marginal risk out west here. Tornado risk a little bit higher than it is today in the northeast here. One thing I want to think about with this is what the smoke impacts would be on the weather here, whether or not that's going to impact how hot it gets, unstable it gets here. So I'll have to see how that plays out, because filtered sunlight by heavy smoke can keep the atmosphere more stable here. So we'll have to see how that works out. And you can see what the biggest risk with this is winds tomorrow, which is Saturday. So we got this 30% chance here. It's not hatched or anything, but it's pretty large. So 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts are possible in this area, 30% chance, slight chance further out here. And then we have the marginal risk even further out. We zoom out a little bit. Out west here, we got a marginal wind risk. Hail risk is marginal in both these areas, focused in the mid-Atlantic and back out west. Then moving into Sunday, we still have a marginal risk up here in the northern tier of the U.S. Slight risk moving into parts of the southeast, North Carolina, South Carolina, and a marginal risk back towards the Atlanta area and Tennessee here in parts of Virginia. So your biggest risk probably with this is going to be winds. There might be a tornado risk as well here. And we talked about in the intro, I talked about the severe risk here continuing as strong systems develop up here in Canada. So a sweeping cold front, likely with embedded short waves, will move through up here, like once again in the upper Midwest. So you're under the gun once again on Monday with this slight risk already. Okay. And the days are kind of screwed up here. You see Monday and Wednesday is missing Tuesday. So we go in, I'll go to the SPC website and go and show you Tuesday here in a minute. But you can imagine it's somewhere in between here. Into Wednesday of next week, severe threat shifts offshore once again to the southeast and parts of the mid-Atlantic. And then after that, there's low predictability and low potential into Friday of next week. We haven't seen low potential in quite a while. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So this is the FTC website showing day 5, right? So which is Tuesday. So we got day 4, which is 15% severe risk up here in the Midwest, and it moves further to the southeast here in parts of the Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic. So that's your severe threat through the middle of the week here. As far as excessive rainfall, this is the continued outlook for ongoing today, but into the rest of today and tomorrow, we got this slight risk all the way down in parts of to the southwest into Texas towards Phoenix, Arizona, and points to the north here in the Intermountain West. Another marginal risk in the parts of the southeast here, touching Georgia, through Tennessee, Indiana, and another marginal risk up to the north here in the upper Midwest. Slight risk of excessive rainfall moves to the eastern U.S. On Saturday to tomorrow, and maintained here in the desert southwest. And we get into Monday. You can see where the marginal risk is here in the Florida Peninsula with that disturbance maybe affecting that area, and then there's southwest into Tuesday. Another marginal threat right along the southeast coast or the mid-Atlantic here, and the desert southwest once again. So flooding will remain a concern in the coming days also. As far as today's weather, we have a lot of alerts on the map here. Flood watches still ongoing and flood warnings in in Texas today. It's just a very unfortunate situation. There's been a lot of water rescues going on here. Also, we got a flood watch here in the desert southwest with ongoing flooding here as well. Arizona and Utah. Up to the north, we have some flood watches as well in the Mountain West, and some fire weather concerns and red flag warnings and air quality alerts here. If you move to the east, you have some heat advisories as well as extreme heat warnings here in Minneapolis today, so be mindful of that. I think the biggest short-term concern is the smoke-related impacts here. Air quality alerts, then smoke advisory, very impactful um, to anybody trying to work outside, and especially to those who have asthma or are susceptible to COPD, things like that. So you can also see down here in the southeast, we got some heat advisories in southern Florida, as well as in eastern Georgia today, which is hadn't been on the map for a few days here. Even in Charlotte, there's an air quality alert today, and heat advisory along the southeast coast, parts of North Carolina and South Carolina here. There may be some other alerts underneath here. Let's just take a look if there's any, move this to heat related. So no other heat related alerts on the map. You see some storms up here to the north here as well, but it's going to kind of keep to the north here. So it doesn't look like it's going to really keep things cool in the longer term here. Hopefully for the Texas, this will move out today and we'll get a chance to see how much damage there was. I'm sure there's going to be some pictures on social media about this, so we'll follow this in the coming days. So we talked about the smoke, and here is a smoke vertically integrated smoke forecast. You can see the magenta here. This is off the charts as far as how dense the smoke is. So do not go outside or stay outside here today. This is a forecast through today. And then hopefully with the system moving through to push that smoke out. But you see up here in upper Midwest, it will still be there. I don't think the fires have abated any. So we'll have to keep an eye on that in the coming days to see how this evolves past 48 hours. But I think as long as we have this northerly flow, the smoke impacts in the Northeast and upper Midwest will continue here. Looks like some wildfires down here in eastern Florida, as well as up here into Colorado, parts of Arizona, and the northwest part of the U.S. as well, with some smoke and fire concerns here. See, to start with, we got some agendas here as well. So if you don't have to be outside for a long period of time, don't be. And you can see what I'm talking about here with the flow pattern. It just serves it pretty well as far as what's going on. Okay, we got this mid-level feature swirling here out west and lifting the atmosphere. You see water vapor loop showing mid-level water vapor in the greens indicates very a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. So that's driving the convection here. And you see this flow generally up this way and up this way, which is driving our smoke from the wildfires this way. And it looks like this pattern will continue. And then, like I said, show them the models, what's going on there. So down here in the Gulf, we see what's starting to develop here. Looks like a mid-level feature, but maybe a surface low develop the next couple of days here. And we'll have to see how this moves after that. But you get the idea of the flow pattern here. So this is a StormNet website, and it's an AI tool that is very good at predicting winds here, different severe threats. So to start with, you see we got those flood warnings down here in Texas and showing the potential for severe wind gusts here. And then we get into the afternoon hours. Here's your probabilities for severe wind gusts today. Not very high, but in parts in the southeast and deep south, parts of mid-Atlantic here. 2 p.m. starting off. Coverage increases, of course, as we get through the day with different focused areas here. Kind of a nebulous pulse thunderstorm type of environment. Maybe some focused areas here, but not overall big threat. And some threats out to the west here as well. Go in the overnight hours. We got the severe wind threat up in the upper Midwest. Moving into tomorrow, we see the severe threat really ramp up in the afternoon hours anywhere in the eastern seaboard. Parts of the southwest and the Texas has some lesser probabilities here. But you see where the biggest probabilities are up into the northeast with the yellows here, as well as the greens and parts of the mid-Atlantic and parts of the southeast. Move a little further in time, you see the yellows really ramp up here in the Saturday afternoon and evening for the northeast and parts of the mid-Atlantic, parts of the southeast as well, and different focused areas here in the blues. And then we go a bit further out into Saturday evening. This is a 12-hour period, so the probabilities kind of change here in scope, but we get some severe threat ramping up out west here, parts of the Ohio Valley, southeast, and the northeast. We get into Sunday. You see a big focused area here, and we talked about that with severe threat early in the video. And you can make out where a boundary would be setting up here with a severe wind threat back to the west here as well. And back down into the southwest, we have this wind potential also. So a large wind potential into Sunday as well. We go through the 12-hour period, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., Sunday into Monday. We have a severe wind threat up here in the northern tier of the U.S., back in the desert southwest and the southeast once again here. Going to Monday, you can see where the severe threat is at this point, and we'll stop it there. Now going back to tornado threat. Don't have much tornado threat, maybe a small one this morning back down here in Texas and up here in the northern tier of the U.S., parts of Minnesota. I don't really see that being a big problem this morning, but you never know. You get into the afternoon hours, you have a distinct bullseye up here in the extreme northern tier of the U.S., as well as maybe potential up here in Montana, but not very high probabilities here. So going into the overnight hours, that threat moves to the east, and then it ramps up a little bit here into Saturday, with a distinct 10, maybe 5-10% chance here between 4 and 5 p.m. on Saturday. Bullseye here in parts of northern Pennsylvania and parts of New York here and central Pennsylvania as well. It moves offshore. And then in the overnight hours, might get a tornado potential here along the Gulf Coast of Florida with that system spinning there as well. There hasn't been much discussion about that, but we'll see how that plays out. And a small tornado risk here along the North Carolina coast. And then we get into Monday. You see where the tornado threat is highest here. So pretty high tornado threat up here in the Midwest, although 10-20% isn't that high, but high enough. Florida once again, and parts of the mid-Atlantic, although quite low at this point. Looking at the hail risk, Got some severe hail possible with those storms we talked about up in the northern tier of the U.S. Maybe some severe hail down here into Florida as we go up the morning hours. And we get some small potentials dotted throughout the nation, with the highest potential up here in maybe northwest Montana. Not a lot of hail threat today. So this is greater than 1 inch diameter hail threat. So go into tomorrow. Hail threat ramps up somewhat here in the northeast and along the southeast here, parts of the deep south, and parts of the Montana once again, and maybe a little bit into Texas here. Go through the time a little bit more. Hail threat maybe moves into Sunday into parts of the southeast. You see our system taking shape up here in the northern tier of the U.S. with a hail threat moving to the east here. And we get a distinct bullseye into Monday where that severe threat is here up in the northern part of the U.S. We're really going to have to keep an eye on this area, see how this threat evolves in the coming days here. So that's it for the forecast. I appreciate y'all watching. And I would ask that any prayers requests you have, put them in the comments, and I'll be happy to pray for them as well, and other people can also. So take care. God bless. Have a great day.